Okay, it's a kind of a sad day today. Uh, Today is the day I have come to realize that my cherished Facebook page, Vladimir Putin for U.S. President, was the name of the page. It was on Facebook. I already mentioned that. I came to the realization today that the whole Facebook page is now unrecoverable, nor is my personal Facebook page because got locked out because I had an old phone that had all of my, login credentials. I had to get this app, called Duo in order to log into my Facebook because I had the Vladimir Putin page and they wanted to be able to link it to my phone. Who knows why? It was already spooky at that point. I guess because I had 200 whole followers or something on the page. In 2000, I should say, I had like 2,000 followers, and they started with that. Now I got locked out because that phone got destroyed, and now they want a passport or ID card to unlock my account. Uh, Look, I don't care. Like any spook can find everything that they want to know about me, I'm sure. The FBI can railroad me, destroy me, if they wanted to. Uh, they could do whatever the fuck they want. We live in a fascist country, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I wanted to go over some other things. So we live in a fascist country, and we're at the point now where a normal person like me or someone else who has no connections is at the mercy of certain groups that are in control, whether it be the oligarchs, whether it be the bureaucrats, it doesn't matter. So we live in a fascist country. And how we know that is that the government is now pressuring private firms like Facebook, like Twitter. We've seen plenty of evidence that they're pressuring these companies to engage in censorship, which is supposed to be illegal for them to do. Okay, so here's the thing is there's something called the Bantam Books decision. It was determined by the Supreme Court quite some time ago that if a state entity pressures a private firm, okay, to engage in censorship, i.e., Bantam Books not publishing books at the behest of a state. At the time, it was Alabama or something, but the concept is the same. In that case, uh, that is unconstitutional even for a private firm to do. Obviously, the difficult part is proving that the federal government was in fact behind the censorship to begin with. Okay, so we have that going on right now. We had to go on with Alex Berenson, okay, and they're trying to keep that quiet. Now we see Twitter is basically a big psyop with 80. Well, we don't know this for sure. There's evidence out there that there is the majority of Twitter users are in fact fake accounts, and when we say bots, I think that also sock puppet accounts, kind of fall into that category. So we have the government involved in that. The government has essentially merged with the financial industry at this point through regulation and through tit for tat sort of tacit arrangements. Uh, a perfect example is how the government deals with companies. They fine companies large amounts of money, but to the companies it's nothing, and they continue with the same behavior they were fined for to begin with, and it's kind of like a bribe. So we have, it's not that the government has nationalized the private firms, it's that the power, the hierarchy of private firms and the government have merged to the point where it's getting hard to distinguish one from the other, especially in the case of banks. And the big tech companies are another example. And people who know these things know that the relationships with the government and big tech go way back to the advent of Silicon Valley. as a concept. And that, my friends, is fascism by definition. Fascism is a type of collectivism where the power not, see, the idea of communism essentially is that the power goes to the proletariat, to the people, or the vast majority of people, whoever decides that they're on the right side of things, really. But in a fascist sort of situation, and don't take my word for it, take Benito Mussolini's words for it, or Giovanni Gentile's words for it. Shout out to Young Ripper. That was the first time I heard about that, really got into that kind of thing, was with his excellent video about fascism and how fascism is related to socialism, or it is socialism, etc., etc. I think it's called, it's one of Young Ripper's earlier videos from a few years ago. But Benito Mussolini, he spoke of heroic capitalism. Heroic capitalism was the idea that firms should put the state, the nation, above making a profit. And they would be regulated in such a way as to ensure that. So the fascists of Italy didn't nationalize companies outright most of the time. Most of the time, they nationalized, de facto nationalized those entities by simply, I got Discord going in light of my, so we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm already getting sidetracked. We're just going to do this straight through like a live stream. It's been so long since I've done a video, and I'm going to, I wonder if I can get Discord going on this screen, right? Let me put it on this screen. Hopefully it doesn't pop up over here. New audio device detected. Switch device. Okay. I'm going to get that going a little bit while I think about what I'm talking about. But so the point of the story I was making here is that, this whole Facebook thing, wanting my ID, look, I really don't care that much if Facebook has my ID, but why ask for my ID right now? That kind of, to me, is a showstopper just for the simple fact that it's creepy. I'm basically a boiler mechanic in Florida. I'm nobody. I mean, I don't even live in a place where, boilers are like really, really important. All right? I'm nobody. They can find me any time of day. They can take me out. They can do whatever. They should be careful with people that don't give a fuck. I think, they're smart enough to know that, but I don't know. I don't know how they run these organizations, these spooky organizations nowadays. I know from in the past how they did it, because I have experience. But I don't really care about, the concept of them wanting my an official document, they call it, just to unlock my account. I mean, used to put all of my information. I used to put the company I worked for on Facebook. I took that off years ago when things got politically hot. And I rarely posted politics on my Facebook. But that's what they're looking for. They want to know who the Trumpers are and where to find them. That's weird. It's just kind of spooky. And that's what they want right now. That could change with the wind. Tomorrow it could be that they want to go after, in a couple of years it could be they want to go after the liberals. It could change, okay? They've always been a sort of apolitical organization that kind of allied with who they saw as the most powerful force in Washington for their own benefit. This is the natural thing that all bureaucracies do. It's not like conspiracy theory. It's like, goddamn, people that say that people still say that. And it's just like, all I can envision behind on the other side of the monitor is like literally a vegetable, nearly disabled person or something, or not disabled, but like a really just mentally, like, unfortunately, a below average person, okay, that has severe a mental disability. That's all I could think of when someone says that. So anyway, we're moving on. So I guess Vladimir Putin for U.S. president is done, but we now have another Discord server, which is named something similar. I don't know what it says. Streamer mode is enabled. Stay safe, my friend. I don't know. See, in this infection of political correctness, while to a degree organic, if we go back far enough, certainly we see a lot of opportunists in government and in the private industry taking advantage of that. So it's where are we at? So I wanted to look at this one thing right here. Let me see. Is this my okay? So we're seeing what I'm showing here. Okay, so just to let's talk about the economy a little bit. I haven't talked about the economy enough lately, or about anything really. So what's happening is, look, the news from Europe. While I am on my guard for hyperbole, and embellishment, I'm on my guard. Uh, a lot of people are saying that Europe is going to collapse and everything's going to, like, totally fall apart. I think that the political system might, react pretty violently and pretty suddenly to what's going to happen. Now, if just half, like, let's say that, some people are calling for 70% reduction in industrial output in places like Germany. I mean, just to think about that, that's absolutely insane. And to think that, what people don't, it seems like we're in one of those situations where, and this has happened in history. I like to talk about history a lot. We're in one of those situations where um, the Germans, like many societies in history, saw the problems on the horizon, but people were in denial collectively. There can be a collective denial. We saw that, for example, in the lead up to World War II and after actually the whole period between World War I and World War II. We saw that in the years leading up to the Great Depression, where you had this fantastic, what do you call it, a melt up? A fantastic speculation bubble in the economy. Everybody knew it. And when it crashed hard. And I can see that sort of mindset happening because, of course, the media doesn't want to talk about how bad things are. And here we have a perfect example. This is why I wanted to just show this headline. We have a perfect example of how, they're trying to paint the fact that the dollar is strong as a good thing. But anybody who is basically just in elementary school on economics, as far as really understanding economics, would know that a strong dollar is something that happens in bad economic times, generally speaking, and it definitely is a harbinger of doom for an economy. It's not something that happens in good economic times. So we could be heading for a disaster, but what do the mainstream media outlets do? I was explaining somebody this earlier. It's very simple. Let's look at who our sponsors are. Just let's look at Reuters. We have a financial services company. Here we have Refinitiv, which I actually like. Here we have the same financial services company. Let's continue. Let's see what we can find because there's going to be more ads. I'm not sure what that is. Entra looks like financial services company. Um, let's go to an article and see what pops up there. If we click on this article, we're gonna, oh, there goes another something. It looks financial services. Let's continue on. Here we have the PGIM. Man, whoever they are really going hard on this page. Uh, Sponsored content. Okay. Fidelity Podcast, that's another financial services company. Credit cards. So here's what I'm getting at. Look at who's sponsoring Reuters. And on CNBC, look who's sponsoring CNBC. I mean, there was a downright scandal that Peter Schiff pointed out, which was Grayscale Bitcoin sponsoring CNBC to a large degree, and then CNBC in turn pumping up Bitcoin nonstop. And a lot of people probably lost a lot of money on that. I know I didn't, because I didn't trust. It's just too volatile. And an asset that's volatile, that is that volatile, which if you want to call it an asset, I call it digital fiat, but digital crypto fiat, as a side note, might be way better than paper fiat at the end of the day, and it's decentralized. So I'm not going to totally write it off. I like the decentralized idea. So anyway, but they can trace it, as we know now, following the pipeline incident where the hackers got traced through Bitcoin or Solana, one or the other. So they're not no company. These guys, for example, wouldn't really appreciate it, nor would any of these guys really appreciate it down here if Reuters went on talking about how everything is about to collapse. I don't think they would really want to put their advertisements on. Why are they going to pay money to put advertisements on an article that is talking about how shitty the economy is going to be? Oh, hey, buy a credit card. Where's it at? Get a credit card. We got these great credit cards. By the way, shit's going to collapse in a few months. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, folks. Okay, so Reuters is like the fucking CIA anyway at this point. And if you look at all the, someone was talking to me about this today. He said this boomer, a very smart boomer who's with it, who isn't a complete boomer. He said, and he's a good friend of mine. And he said, why the CNBC is not saying anything about economy or anything. And I'm like, look at the advertisements on CNBC. I don't think Charles Schwab would appreciate it or waste their money putting advertisements on a channel that was doing doom and gloom about the economy. So it's all lies. Like the financial media lies and lies. They just lie in a different way, but they still lie. Now at times, they seem to be more. So at times they seem to be, which isn't saying much, more apt to care about their reputation and credibility. That's true. I believe that. But we can go back to the home page here, and what do we see? What do we see, folks? Look, we see, Britain's going to do bad. All roads lead. They're talking a lot about the strong U.S. dollar. And people don't realize, so they're going to think the average person, the average normie that reads this, is going to be like, the dollar's doing great. That's good, right? At least, that counters the inflation narrative, which might be maybe a political incentive for doing this, for saying stuff like this. The dollar's doing great, so there is no inflation. How much you want to bet? I'm making prediction number 1 here. Well, I probably made a couple predictions. Prediction A, watch these politicians. If the dollar does good, if the dollar continues to do great, watch these politicians come out and they're going to say, yeah, the dollar, that's why there's no inflation. So the inflation's not as big of a deal because the dollar's doing good. And it probably, as far as the cost of imported goods, it could possibly have a positive impact, but that's not guaranteed. Because if the dollar does really, really good, that can crush a lot of manufacturing economies, leading to further supply shortages, which would only cause inflation to go up. As the Fed said not too long ago, covering his ass, Powell, which, is there a picture of him? Maybe he's not being talked about at all? I have yet to see in a long time no picture of Fed Chair Powell on a, headline page for financial news. But, there's a first time for everything. So Yeah, the Fed was quick, maybe not so quick, but he did end up covering his ass a few months ago, saying, "Well, we can't control supply." And as I have said in all of my previous videos, this is as much a supply problem as a demand problem, which is why lowering interest rates won't necessarily help. As uneducated economist, my fellow uneducated economist, whose name is Uneducated Economist, he said that for a while, and he's pointed to deflation being a problem, and I could see that in the more midterm to long term. But what's going to crush the economy, what's going to cause the deflation is the inflation and the stagnation and the poor policies, which, the voters just have to suffer a little bit, and we will. And then people will start rediscovering their interest in the fields of history and economics. Until then, and there's going to be that denial phase where shit could potentially get chaotic in between. In between the delusion stage that they're in now and the awakening stage that they'll eventually come to once they suffer some. We suffer some. In between that, there'll be a chaotic denial stage, and things could get interesting there. So, take on the economy is this. I don't know if the European problems are going to be as bad as they say it will. I think it is interesting that they're running out of time, and I see no sign at this point that they're going to, the leaders of Europe that have, that are throwing a tantrum right now and refusing to accept the fact that they're going to have to start trading with Russia on their terms now. And the Europeans don't want to hear this, but they'll eventually swallow the big, nasty red pill, and they will probably close to the last minute. You'll see a flurry of activity, and it still won't solve all the problems because energy is going to be much higher priced. They have no ability to produce their own this winter. And so oil can go up a lot, and I think it's possible it will. The Biden administration is going to do everything they can to keep that gas price low through November, through October at least. We have 2 months. We're going to see what they do. I think they might do something incredible at some point in the next 2 months to keep those gas prices low. And they haven't gone low enough to really repair the poor approval. I think that, for what it's worth, approval probably has gone up for Biden and for the Democrats a little bit, although all of these polls are historically 7 points off in favor of the Democrats on average. I mean, most of these polls, they are all way off. So you can expect, we saw this with 2018. We saw this with 2020 as well. They were off on Biden. Biden only won by 1% or 2%. I think they had him by 3 or 4 or something like that. I'd have to look at Real Clear Politics on that one. But, so, that's the economy. Other than that, the only other thing I want to talk about is Ukraine a little bit. And so, this annoys me. So Ukraine, so we have all of these clueless fucking civilians. And it's just, they're just so annoying with this shit. Oh, well, Russia looks like it's not doing too good, huh? Listen. Russia is doing fantastic in this war. And on the economic front. Throughout this war, the only thing the Ukrainians have had... Now, I have to say this. The Ukrainians have put up a hell of a fight. Well, they had since 2014 to prepare to build defensive fortifications. They've been getting weapons and training from the West since 2014. And this year alone, $100 billion worth of it, maybe 30% of that, has made it to the front lines. Okay, so those are all, even if only 30% of the 100 billion or so in weapons and aid have made it to where they're supposed to go in Ukraine, that's still a lot and has given Ukraine a lot more shelf life than they would have had otherwise, and has kept basically the political situation stable. I think without all of this money coming in to get stolen by the politicians, political support for the war and for Zelensky would have eroded very quickly. But in where the Ukrainians have had the advantage and have done well is in optics and psychological warfare. And that's fitting since we have an actor who pretended to be president on TV and then became president. Okay, now he's running the country, so that's fitting. And he has the CIA and MI6 behind him, especially MI6. These guys, they're like fucking ballerinas or some shit. I don't know what the fuck they're. Those MI6 people, bunch of, I don't know, these guys. I'm sure there's mostly good agents. Look, I've known some people that were in the intelligence agencies, so they're all stand-up people that I've known. I mean, I've met some not so stand-up people in passing, but all the ones I know are stand-up people. And but these MI6 guys are clowns, man. I don't know. They look like clowns. But anyway, we'll see if they can redeem themselves at some point. And the CIA guys, I'm telling you, they're kind of like, they're not what they used to be, obviously. So they had the optics war won, and the Russians, here's the thing, what people don't get is, first of all, Ukraine in 2022 is not Iraq in 2003. It's definitely not Afghanistan in 2001, 2002. It's not even Iraq in 1991. Now, in 1991, what happened to Iraq was that they had, first of all, outdated equipment. They had a lot of it. They had a lot of troops. But also, the leadership was really poor. They had really bad military doctrine, okay? They basically dug all of their tanks in they didn't do maneuver warfare. They did trench warfare with tanks. And that's why they got their asses kicked. Ukraine has no such flaws. They have a decent military with a lot of corruption, but still decent, with decent training, spectacular weaponry, and all of the intelligence assets they'll ever need. Okay, and so the idea that Russia was just going to plow through Ukraine like the United States did to Iraq in 2003, when the country was already on the verge of collapse, had been for many years. Or in 1991, where they basically turned their tanks into, immobile howitzers and put them in trenches in the desert. Didn't make much sense. Ukraine is a whole different animal. The United States couldn't conquer Ukraine. And neither will Russia. Russia doesn't intend to. What their goal from the beginning, as far as I can tell, forget their propaganda about Nazis. They've used that to great effect. And there is like a little small, there is definitely, they have more of a Nazi problem than most other countries, any other country really in Europe or America, where, Nazi-esque sort of people have political power. That just doesn't happen much at all in Europe or in the United States. It's very rare. It hasn't happened for years, but there they actually have political power. So there's that, but it's over. It's embellished. It's over. Come on, let's just be real. It's not like there's Nazis around every corner in Ukraine. It's a poor European country. People are racist. That's just the way it is. But they're not racist. See, they're not racist to the degree, in the same way that people in the United States are racist. It's a whole different thing. Race in everywhere else in the world is not thought of in the same way as the United States, as far as I've seen. So, This idea that Russia's doing bad because they didn't plow over Ukraine like the United States did to Iraq in 2003, this goes to show you how fucking stupid American civilians are. They're fucking pathetic. They're stupid. They're just so fucking clueless. Oh, well, yeah, so, no. First of all, Russia doesn't have a timeline. As long as there's support for the war, which, by the way, we're now at 7 or 8 months. Support for the war in Russia is still very strong. If anyone can prove to me all of those polls are completely made up and there's no truth to them, I'd be interested. I've never seen actual proof that, Russian elections were completely rigged or that the Russian media is controlled, but so is the United States mainstream media. So they have no timeline. Their main objective is to destroy the Ukrainian military. And this is what real military strategy looks like, folks. In the vein of Clausewitz, this is what real military strategy looks like. It's not a strategy concocted by civilian weirdos in the civilian government. It's a strategy concocted by professional military men who are real military men. They have an officer corps. The officer corps of any army is really important, by the way. If we want to look at effective militaries, show me an effective military. I'll show you a robust and competent officer corps. If we're talking modern warfare. But United States, what do we have for generals? We have 40 four-star generals. We had like less than 10, maybe around 10 during World War II. And all of these generals most of them are holding bullshit positions, and they're politicians, they're yes men. That explains why Afghanistan turned out the way it did. There was no Patton around when they were getting the ball rolling on Afghanistan last year. There was no Patton around to, grab one of these fucking cabinet weirdos, Lloyd Austin, by the collarbone, by the collar of his blazer, and throw him up against the wall and say, "You're not putting my boys in danger like that, you dumbass." There was no one like that in the room when they were doing their planning on, or lack thereof, on Afghanistan. A real military leader, which we have none in the position of general anyway, a real military leader would have resigned if necessary, and loudly. MacArthur stuck to his fucking guns, whether he was right or wrong. He stuck to his fucking guns. Really, Eisenhower was the model for four-star generals today. Fucking politicians. So, Russia has a competent officer corps. They don't have to take over the country. As a matter of fact, they never wanted to. But they are going to destroy its military, and if it takes them, as long as support for the war continues, as it has been, the Russians can sit back with 10% of their military, which they're rotating it out. They can, first of all, train their entire military. Give it a couple years. Their entire military will be trained in combat at that point, actual combat, which is important. And they will sit back. They will let the Ukrainians do whatever. If they want to do counteroffensives for optics and sacrifice 10,000 of their own troops, the Russians are just completely happy to sit back and let those people march into the killing fields. And that's what they're going to do. I don't think this, listen, Everybody's got an opinion who's like a military nerd like me. Everybody's got an opinion on this. I would say, yes, this could last beyond into 2023. I don't see it going much further than that. I think that the Russians can just sit back again, let the Ukraine will fall apart this winter. As Europe falls apart, so will Ukraine. The Russians seem to be putting together a good strategy um, with good planning. And and then on the Ukraine side, we have Ukrainian leadership, which the military leadership seems like it's actually okay, but the military leadership, which is there's a general I hear about a lot. The military leadership doesn't actually have much of a say. The war is being run by a 5'3" actor cokehead and his advisors from Britain, his MI6 clown advisors, and Boris Johnson, that weirdo, and more weirdos in DC. And that's who's running this war. And that's why it's a fucking clown show. You see, they're even showing every day. This is like propaganda. This is like where I go to see the propaganda. And of course, they had a Ukraine. They always have to put in a Ukraine article. And I'm just going to look at it real quick while I'm talking about this, if I can actually do it. I don't know if I'll be able to do it. Oh, God. These guys are sick with the Trump obsession. I don't know. I just saw a Ukraine article, and I wanted to see what they're saying. It was after this one. Smoke billows over Ukraine. So they're trying. Okay, it's a video. They got Ukrainians. They're smoke billowing. Basically, this was a counteroffensive, which they say is going to be a long counteroffensive, which means they're probably just going to. It's going to be really bad. They're throwing people's lives away because they felt they had to do a counteroffensive to keep the Western media and the Western governments interested. So they're throwing people's lives away. This is the sickest, most sadistic shit. And American civilians, okay? American civilians, you're not making any friends in the world here, okay? There may come a time when we need help from other people, and they're not going to forget about shit like this between now and then. That's why this shows the stupidity of human aggregate collectives right here. We are seeing the pinnacle of collective stupidity with Europe pretending that everything's going to be hunky-dory at this point, to the America thinking it's okay to push countries to buy out governments, which is what we did in Ukraine. We bought out the Ukrainian government. Okay, and now we're pushing Ukraine into a war, and it's wiping out probably an entire generation at this point. They already had low birth rates. The whole thing about it, the end result is this. Ukraine may continue on paper, just like many countries have, Let me think of a good country that continued on paper long after that it de facto ceased to exist, I can't think of one. There's got to be one out there. I don't know. If anybody had any idea, put it in the comments. But this is the sickest, most sadistic shit. I mean, goes into the realm of what we did to Iraq. Iraq was by far that was the peak of our sadism, okay? But this is coming close. And Americans, they're so stupid. They don't understand history, okay? They don't understand economics. And that's why, between the collapse and the awakening, we can see a period of real crazy shit, of people that are desperate, that don't know what to do. And, I can see that happening. I'm buying gold. I'm buying provisions. It's time to start thinking about what would happen if everything if you had a major systemic collapse. All right, so have anything else to say? That's it. I think, yeah, if what happens in Europe turns out to be just half as bad as a lot of people are saying, it's going to be a disaster not only for Europe but the United States. It's all just a complete shit show. And I said this in a video way back in January or December. I said, look, I don't really know what's going to happen with this war, but I know that whatever happens, it's going to be a fucking debacle. I've said that. I like to repeat, I like to remind, in my videos how I said that, when I said that, and that I said that. And because it was a very easy call to make because we have a crisis in leadership, not only in the United States, but in Europe as well. And that crisis in leadership is really just the fumes boiling up from a big pile of sludge of a population. We have a weak, pathetic, decadent, stupid population, and that's why our leadership is so bad. Okay, I've said enough. I'm out.